Den vill åka dit.
Den vill gärna åka dit. Där är pengar.
Set camera. One more. Film productions are stressful. We take this truth to be self-evident. Cyberpunk, in this example, requires smoke and LED screens for the most part, neon signs, puddles, light that grabs your attention instead of just, being invisible light. And obviously when you make one of these films, the cyberpunk films I mean, you want it to look no less good than all the establishing shots in Blade Runner, because otherwise, what's the point? I'm Augustin Sjöberg, and I've directed a couple of films so far, and before the start of each and every one of them, I've never failed to feel extremely stressed out for whatever reason, like a camera not working, or an actor not showing up, or a plague releasing a global update unlocking all new security features, or I feel stressed out because I feel too calm. And with this cyberpunk shoot, I wanted to avoid stress at all costs. Because of stress, I've never felt I've been able to give direction my full attention. Now, arguably, you can't avoid stress altogether, but I wanted to have, or at least try to have, the clear conscience of obsessive risk mitigation done in the pre-production part. Arthur Schopenhauer, wrote somewhere, I think, that happiness is not the sum total of positives, it's more like the subtracted negatives, to not be sick. That's happiness. Clearly, Schopenhauer never had warm McDonald's in a parking lot, but when it comes to directing, I think he might be onto something. I wanted to induce happiness by way of subtracting all the stressors. And that's how I became. Now, it may sound a bit cynical, and that's because partly it is that, but films hate being born.
Films are creatures of the void, the same void which spawned us. As a species, they kind of cling to any opportunity not to be dragged into this glorious 4K existence. Any chance they get. One crew member catching flu, one guy, and the whole thing, months of preparation, will fold like a pancake, at least on my level of money.
Arthur had a best friend, Thomas. Thomas claimed that life is nasty, brutish, and short, and if we accept the short part, the same might be applied to most movies, both in the making and especially the watching. No, I'm sorry. The biggest challenge to any producer or director is making sure that the shoot will materialize at all. So how do you do that? I think through conscientiousness. I've never been able to achieve that at a level that I was comfortable with. But this time I really wanted to gorge myself on conscientiousness, to follow up on everything, to write everything down and think about everything, turning everything over in your head at least once. To this end, I started to create to-do lists, unloading head stress onto humanity's most trusted storage device for the last thousands of years, stones, no paper. And by doing so, I turned big goals into basic, more achievable ones. I think the trick though to making it work is that you have to work hard at not getting discouraged by the sheer number of minute details that this method yields, because it can be pretty overwhelming to see like 1,000 tasks stacking up in front of you like a mountain of pasta. Also, I log my activity. So far, I've logged every hour and I think every minute I put into this project. Writing this episode finds its way onto the log, as does managing the log itself. Sometimes I watch myself as I type out my own README files to put in the crown folders of my folder structures, meaning I'm a guy who reads my own READMEs, meaning I'm the me in README. I leave a trail of reminders and instructions behind me, kind of like Guy Pearce or everybody's best friend. Why do I do this? Well, I'm not so young anymore, and I want to know how much time stuff takes. Not knowing that kind of drives me nuts. Spoiler, knowing also drives me nuts. On average, and I think I have the math to back this up, stuff takes approximately 3 times more time than I imagined them to take. So how do you record a cyborg dying in his own waste in a stress-free environment? I think, first of all, you pick a deadline. Just like my own deadline, I prefer to have deadlines stuffed away as far into the future as possible, but not so far that I lose what momentum I've managed to accumulate. And where do you find deadlines as a director? Well, normally you do find them in the roomiest parts of your heads of departments' Google calendars. You can go beyond that and look for a deadline years ahead into the future, but eventually I suspect you will come to a point where your gut will draw a line in the sand and kind of go, come on, man, why are you doing this to us? You're pathetic. Like, look at you. This is disgusting. What happened to you? You're a wreck. Plus, in my case, we had a natural Himalaya rising before us. I was going to Japan by the end of March, and it would be so great to be done with the shoot before then. This was way back in 2025, the year when billionaire, car maker, and noted fan of 1930s Germany, Henry Ford, had been dead for 78 years. We synced our schedules and set the shoot day to March 15, 2025. Having a deadline meant that I could start to prioritize among the 1,000 tasks I've been mapping out, starting with the ones that ran the highest risk of going awry. And since this was cyberpunk, there was a lot of awry to be had. You know, a techie costume, another techie costume, a motorcycle, smoke machines, you name it. You need people to tend to that, and you need people to tend to the people. Actors: Emil, depicted here, birthing a cyborg corpse. Christopher, another wonderful actor, seen here being utilized to his least extent. A cinematographer, Pelle, camera guy in chief. At least 2 gaffers, Vida and Elias, that is, people rigging the lights. A first assistant director, Serhej, in charge of the schedule, the shot list and the smoke machine, making sure everything runs on time and being the primary voice user on set. A production designer, Linda, in charge of dirtying the place up. A costume designer, Katja, making sure our homemade costumes looked good and hadn't started to disintegrate yet. A first camera assistant, Paul, in charge of pulling focus, switching batteries, and so on. A second camera assistant, Hanna, in charge of other gear relating to the camera as well as running the clapper. A behind-the-scenes guy with a camera, Oliver. A location manager, Marcus, in charge of parking and keys and general safety. A location assistant, Kevin. And finally, a crafts guy, Vilma, in charge of food, drink, and throwing it all away. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but this list does not contain a script supervisor or a sound department at all, actually. Of course, on a real shoot, you do need to have a script supervisor and a whole sound department. And probably, I don't know, a script supervising department. I don't know. I'm a hack. But still, these roles, you can design the shoot around them so you don't need to tend to those areas. So, how do you find people? You need a lot of them, right? Well, you can go online, but actually in our case, Pelle, who is more of a regular in the film industry, happened to know just an assortment of really skilled film workers. And so did I, like a couple of people I knew, people that I met on the TV series, for example. But Pelle did suggest most of them based on, maybe this is the hack in me speaking, but are they nice people? You know, like, can you talk to them? Can you get along with them? Do you like hanging around with them? This is the entirety of my hiring philosophy. Does this person add to my stress or reduce it? Because, you know, I supply my own stress. I have like, you know, I have a bag of my own neuroticism. I'm neurotic enough as is, you know, like I don't need yours. You can hang on to yours. So, the big awry going threatening tasks. If nothing gets you going so much as the thought of food being thrown away, I urge you to go and find work as a crafts guy on a TV series. No human, least of all a crafts guy with a mild bout of IBS, can out-eat the avalanche of food headed to the bins every day. Every piece of salad that ended up uneaten, I considered it my duty to donate to the digital image technician Emil Duvander, usually the last guy to leave the office. And one night I showed him a video.
barngrova. Låt det vara osagt.
Me and Pelle had done a stupid little commercial earlier that weekend using a well-known bread brand and some fake infections. Emil, laughed and said, if you guys ever need a motorcycle for one of those, call me. He does Arctic motorcycle rides, check it out. And he warned me that he wasn't a good actor, but that really didn't matter because he A, had a motorcycle and B, rode that motorcycle, and on top of that, he was able to walk purposefully. And that's all the role requires. Having a motorcycle was great because among all the props, the biggest cause of stress to me was the light strip that was going on the side of the motorcycle. We wanted the motorcycle to power up when you tugged at the accelerator, and the idea was to have the color red travel the length of an LED strip. It needed to do this in a linear fashion, like a stepless transmission. But if you look at your regular everyday LED strip, most of them don't have that function because the diodes are placed kind of far and wide between, and the more lights they use, the more expensive they get. We also needed kind of a faded cover to blur the remaining increments, and weirdly enough, not many LED strips have that function natively. Which is strange considering the saturated markets that are the unexpected wins of living in this cyberpunk dystopia.
I bet the Japanese don't have this problem.
Not finding what I was looking for, I grew desperate. At one point I actually thought about building one myself using an Arduino or something, Arduino, but then I realized what an idiotic move that would be, because I don't hold an electric degree yet. While trying to solve this issue, I got a text message from Pelle, the cinematographer, saying a piece of news that wasn't great.
Long ago, it turned out, he had agreed to work on another production on the day of the night on which we were set to shoot. So if he couldn't pull out of that commitment, he basically had to work for 20 hours straight. For loads of good reasons and some minor bad ones, the shooting date could not be changed, neither for our production or the other one. Obviously, I didn't like the idea of him pulling a North American. He promised to look into it. I finally did settle on an LED strip, Philips Hue Play Gradient Light. The way it works is that it mirrors whatever color is on the screen. So the idea was to play a video, pitch black, and do a left to right reveal of a solid red. Though the drawback to this was that you needed to hook it up to an actual computer using an actual router and a Hue bridge on top of that. All that stuff would have to be hauled to a location for that one shot. On top of that, Philips Hue is not the cheapest of brands.
At first, I was kind of reluctant to buy, but then I found one on sale and I reasoned, at least I can put it on the back of my monitor in order to enhance the gaming experience of the games that I never find time to play. So, it resolved itself that way. Hopefully it wouldn't look too tacky on the side of a motorcycle. Then we created the props and the costumes, and once we had the shot list down, Sergej could start to work on the schedule. 15th of March, crew call at 6, camera roll at 7:30. Things were moving. So far, I felt really good, and that made me nervous, because the Pelle thing hadn't resolved itself. He had to work for 20 hours straight. Here in socialism, and I was really worried for him, but he said it, don't worry about me, I'll be fine, and I believed him. We were ready to roll.
On the day before the shoot, me and Pelle drove to Studio Korsholm, run by the Hallesjö brothers. Two really nice guys who has twice a lifetime's worth of camera equipment and accessories for rent. We rented for 3 nights in case we needed to do pickups. Having loaded our cars dangerously heavy, we drove back to Malmö at a tractor's pace. We put it in night storage, and I went home and did some more budgeting before taking my bike to the location. Me and Pelle signed the papers and gave our landlords a box of chocolate as a token of our gratitude. That night I watched How the West Was Won in its entirety in order to reverse my sleep cycle for tomorrow's all-nighter. It did not work.
On the day of the shoot, we rose at 9:30, and the last remaining hours before the shoot, I kind of just spent obsessively catastrophizing every which way an accident might shut the whole production down, a camera breaking down, or an actor not showing up, or Pelle exhausting himself. And then I came to a point where I just topped out, if you see what I'm saying. I'd built this ball up of catastrophes. I just took a step back, and then I went the profane version of it's in God's hands, and something happened. I don't know about you, but sometimes before doing something huge, something that is huge to you, and you feel so over-rehearsed, you get reckless, zen, and it feels completely out of character, but you can't just for the life of you be bothered at this point.
So when we later that day did a photogrammetry session for the first time ever, me standing in as a lone rider on the motorcycle, and everything just went pretty much perfect, I wasn't grateful at all. It was this really weird feeling of, yeah, I know, yeah, sure, whatever.
So I went back to my computer, I rendered the red power-up, watched a video of Spielberg directing, and that was it.
Then we picked up the equipment and drove to the location. People were already arriving. Sometimes being a director is kind of like organizing a party. You know, you invite a lot of people that you like to hang around with, but instead of partying, you actually get to have fun together. You get to create something. And, once all the lights are up and all the C-stands are in everybody's way and the actors are arriving, you do get this big sense of, okay, this is for real. It's come alive. It has materialized. We have beat him.
Okay. Then Pelle called. He had gotten 45 minutes overtime, which sucked, but then all of a sudden he was there. 45 minutes, that's nothing. And he showed up in a big truck with all the remaining stuff, and we were ready to go. And being ready, we went.
Här går min liksom, så det där.
Så allt det här kommer vi inte se någonting av. Då kan det vara där.
We are ready. Okay.
I was a happy director. Looking back, it seemed like I had prepared for everything except one thing. What to do if it all just worked out. I felt kind of cornered by the sheer luck that I was facing. This is just me picking faults. If the project is right and the people are right, and if their work is fulfilling, and all of this is brought together in a place that's unquestionably cinematic, then I think you can't stop the film from happening. Then it's no longer a case of you willing it into existence. It's just a case of you having to step out of the way, let people do their thing. And you're just there as kind of a guiding, ray of light, like God's own wisdom and munificence. Thank you.